The night has come, it's cold and losing my control. Your light is gone, and lonely darkness fill my soul. I wish that you could save me from my isolation. It's way too complicated. Let's start this conversation. Let's start this conversation. We got no relation. I have come, it's cold and losing my control.
Good evening, and if you're just tuning in, you are listening live to UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network, and this is the Angel Rock. I'm your host, Laura Lee Potvin. Hang on, guys, grabbing a few things. We got a snowstorm coming, of course, so we got crazy stuff here, and thanks for your patience. Give me 1 sec here. I was looking for what I wanted on here. I'll find it in a sec. Hang on as we get talking. So if you guys like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell all your friends and family about the network. It's been around for 25 plus years. We do broadcast to every country in the world, believe it or not, but 80% of our audience is audio only. We still love that you're listening, but if you do want to join in the chat, we'd love to have you join, because you're probably, if you are listening, you're probably going, how can I ask questions? Who's she speaking to? So I'll tell you how to join in really quickly. So under my name, Laura Lee Potvin, or / Angel Rock, you can join me on my Facebook profile, on my LinkedIn, my YouTube channel, which is the Angel Rock with Laura Lee Potvin. We are also on the Angel Rock Live on Instagram. Hopefully they stay live for 2 hours. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We're also on UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network on our Facebook profile, our YouTube channel, our Twitch channel, and I have to give a huge shout out to Joe Montaldo, who's the owner of this network, and he's got many of his own shows like UFO Undercover. He's got News on the Flip Side, and he provides this wonderful space for us to broadcast to you from New Orleans, and so we're using his Rumble under Jojo Mon. What else do I want to tell you? You guys, it's Carnation Mondays, and so we love Carnation. They sponsor all the live shows here on Monday, including the Angel Rock, and we would like to thank them profusely for that. We really appreciate it. So Carnation is a global brand. So if you're out doing some grocery shopping or whatever that may be, shopping, and you run into a brand by Carnation, please consider supporting them, because they support us here to bring all the great shows that we have here live. And like I mentioned, we do broadcast to every country in the world, but also that we have several shows daily live, one after the other, 7 days a week. When we're not streaming live, the archive server kicks in and picks from the last 25 plus years we've been around. So we are technically live 24/7. We also have a website, which is www.uprntalkradio.com. It is getting revamped at the moment, and I hear through the grapevine that a chat room is coming there as well. So it's another way to connect with people and chat. We've got such a great live chat here. They're great to people that are new coming in here. They've all become friends here and friends of the network as well. But there's just such wonderful people, all the questions they ask and comments, and it really does add to the shows. So checking my checklist here, you guys. What else do I want to tell you? I guess I should tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a Canadian. I am a psychic medium, crystal Reiki, energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher, and mentor. I am also a registered nurse. I'm an animal communicator. And what else? Very well versed in near-death experiences, having had one as a toddler myself, and I've studied them professionally and personally for over 40 years. And lastly, I'm very well versed in the paranormal. I always say, didn't go looking for it, it found me. And we've shared some of our story on the Travel Channel's Paranormal Survivor, season 4, episode 9, called Demonic Hauntings, and you're going to see somebody familiar in that episode that I did not know at that moment. Hang on 1 sec here. Sorry, I had to grab a drink. It's Michelle DeRoche, who is our station manager. She also has some incredible shows on the network. She has 2 nights on Wednesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, which is the Outer Realm. And she has a second show called Beyond the Outer Realm on Tuesdays from 2 to 3:30. We just did our first episode of the Paul McCartney conspiracy. I hate the word conspiracy. I prefer I guess, truth seeking. We're going to be doing a part 2 of that coming up in the next couple months. So she's in that episode. So small world that I ended up running into her and did not know her from when we did the episode. So you can find that on YouTube and all over the place. Let me see, did I forget anything? Oh yes, if you guys want to watch us on TV, you can. The network does have its own TV channel, and it's on Roku. So if you go to Roku, the channel store itself, there's a search button. You're going to type in UFO space P as in paranormal. There's a drop-down list. We're about the third or fourth one down. You're looking for UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. And what I was looking for, people are already saying hi to you, Steve. I told you my audience loved you. I'm going to look for Steve's biography here. Give me one sec. Got too many things open here. That's what it is. It'll take me 1 second here, but we're glad to have him back. You guys just loved him when he was on here. I think it was, well, actually, it was in the summer, I think, wasn't it?
May.
Yeah, I think it was. Give me 1 sec. Steve, let's see if we can find that. Actually, I think you sent me your bio. So give me 1 second here, guys. I was trying to do that, and what ended up happening was the audio was on my secondary phone. So give me a second here. A little rusty, you guys. Sorry, I haven't been live, as you know. So back live on the Angel Rock here every week, and we will be. So you know what, Steve? Tell you what, I'll let you introduce yourself. So who could do it better than you? So how about I let you do that?
That's a good idea. Okay.
Wonderful thing you're able to do.
Okay. Well, I always classify myself as a hypnotherapist and regression specialist. And I've been a hypnotherapist for over 33 years, and in a desperate effort to appear to look as if to appear as if I know what I'm doing, I just share I dropped the figure that I've done over 15,000 therapy sessions in my career. So most of my work is in regression, and regression basically involves going back in hypnosis in trance to relive traumas in the past, to clear issues that we have in this present lifetime. I've written 3 books, which have all been published, about past life regression and about my career. The latest one came out last year, and that's The Adventures of a Hypnotherapist. And in that book, I've endeavored to cover not just past life regression, because that's what I'm most well known for. My previous 2 books, Famous Past Lives and The Power of Past Life Regression, were focused solely on past life regression as a therapy. But in this book, I've tried to give a broader view, not just of my career, but also about regression into this lifetime, and also into ancestral lives as well. Because everybody tends to get hooked into past life regression because it's so damned fascinating and an incredibly powerful therapy. But people tend to forget that regression has 3 different aspects: this life, past lives, and ancestral lives. So what I've tried to do in the new book is cover more of regression and tell more of my clients' stories in terms of how regression into any of those areas has helped to heal such a wide variety of issues, from obsessive compulsive disorder to phobias to anxieties to trichotillomania, which not many people
may not know what that is. I do, but people may not know what that is. So you might have to tell them.
Okay. Well, I mean, shall I share you that client's story to begin with?
Okay. Well, hang tight. Let's say hi to everybody. Can you hang on to that thought? Because people may have heard of it, but maybe not the terminology for it. But let's say hi to everybody quickly here. So we got Mish. I always say she's joining us from the future. She's over in Australia, so it's Tuesday morning over there. She says, "Good day, Laura Lee. Good day, Steve. And good day, chatters." We got Patsy Foister here saying hi to everybody. Tina Lumasol. Good evening, Laura Lee, and all in the chat. Looking forward to a great show with Steve. I hope Dell's health is improving. That's my hubby's name. Well, apparently he's coming home tomorrow. We just found out before the show. That should be interesting, but we will see. But thank you, everybody, and I'm going to give you a huge shout out because I've got so many messages and beautiful thoughts and prayers. I really appreciate it, and I deeply apologize. I just have not talked to anybody. I've been too busy, but thank you very, very much for that. Michelle Wilfong says, hello, Laura Lee, and that's Steve. I always love to give Michelle a huge shout out. Of course, TikTok worked for us Thursday night, and now it's kicked me off for a week. It loves to do that because I don't use their software. So they time me out for a week, Steve, when I use it. But she's my mod over there, and she's incredible at what she does. She also has her own channel on TikTok called My Haunted Apartment. She catches some pretty interesting stuff on camera over there. So please go over and give her some support, please. If you're on TikTok, I'd really appreciate it. And I know she would. So let's see. We've got Sherry Madigan. She goes, hi, Laura Lee. Good to see you. Good to see you too. I was telling Steve, I think this is the first show back I have done live since December 19th on the Angel Rock. So I'm glad to be back, guys. Let's see, scrolling here. Everybody's saying hi to one another. Got Julie Jean Bassett saying hi to both of us and everyone. I always like to give Julie Jean Bassett a huge shout out. She is an incredible animal communicator. She's one of my mentors. I've taken her animal communication course, and we've worked together on a few things. She's also helped me with some of my own animals. I know Carrie Lynn Shellhorn, who I forgot to mention as well. How could I forget? Who is my co-host on Thursday nights with Beneath the Hollow Moon. She also has Spirit Switchboard here on Fridays from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. She's worked with, I know that Carrie Lynn's worked with her as well. She's also an incredible shamanic practitioner. And I've had a session with her. I think it's now going on almost a year and a half ago, but it was life-changing. So if you guys want to get a hold of her, she runs courses, all kinds of things like that. You can get a hold of her with the pet stuff at juliejeanbassett.com, or shamanic practitioner things is at whitetailshamanichealing.com. So hang on. Oh, I see Z Sun Dragon. I like to call him by his muggle name, Steve, Kevin. So he's here. Got Kathy Hanley Little. Kathy, I got to give you a huge shout out. I saw a picture of you. It was beautiful. I did not know what you looked like, so it was so nice to see a selfie on there. I saw over the weekend. Well, look who why did I have a funny feeling he was going to be here, Steve? Look who's here. Got Gavin Lee Davies. Happy New Year to you both. Two amazing people.
Oh,
right?
Gavin, yeah. Great bloke,
Yes.
great man. Good to see you, Gavin, and good luck for the new year.
Absolutely, because Gavin actually connected Steve and I. think it was 5 or 6 years ago. I think was it your first book? I think, Steve. Second. I think it was. Was it your second? Okay, I knew it was one. It was one or the other. And then when you had the third come out, he connected us. Got Carrie Fast here. Hello, tribe. Contessa Martin saying hi to everybody. Let's see. Everybody say all excited Dell's coming home. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We'll figure it out, though. We always do. Let's see. Oh, sure. You had to rub it in. Mish. Look what she's putting in here. I always love to say hi to everybody. Mish is complaining that it's stupidly hot here in Australia. And I'm sure you said you went home over to the UK over Christmas. It was cold. The weather's been crazy here where I am in Canada this winter. Mind you, we'll be saying that in the summertime, won't we? Because where you are now, it's going to get real hot in the summer. Right, Steve?
Yeah, I'm in Florida right now, and it does get very hot, but it's fantastic.
Oh, I love Florida. I have friends, actually, that I grew up with that live there. And, I love Florida. It's a beautiful place. So we got Tristan Jacobson saying, namaste, dear soul fam. Just make sure I haven't missed anybody. I'm scrolling through. Everybody's talking to one another. Oh, Julie says she has a beginner animal communication workshop coming up in February. Same with the animal chakra class in February too. I took that. Very informative, you guys. So if you're interested in working with animals, Julie's your girl. Have we got everybody? Hey, we got Heidi Gall. She says, hi, Laura Lee and Steve. Much love from Boulder. Well, right back at you. I think we got everybody. So trichotillomania. Let's start with that story. Steve will tell people what it is. I know what it is, but...
Yeah, well, trichotillomania is an anxiety-based disorder whereby a person pulls their hair out. And... generally, it's hair on the head. This particular story I'm going to share is even more unusual. But just as the first time I treated it many years ago was a lady called me and said that she had trichotillomania. She was pulling her hair out and she had very little hair left. And she came to see me at my office when I was working face-to-face in those days. Now, as you know, I do everything online, but in those days it was at the office. And she turned up and she had a berry on her head, and she had hair. And so she sat down. I said, but I thought you said you were hair pulling? And she said, yes. She took a beret off and the top of her head was completely bald. She kept a ring of hair all the way around. So when she had the beret on and she went outside, you couldn't tell that she was bald. There was a ring of hair. Anxiety-based disorder, it was all coming from her childhood. She had a terrible relationship with her mother. And people who tend to do trichotillomania, hair pulling, partly it's a sort of a release because of the emotional pain that they're feeling because of what's happening in their life. Partly it can be a sort of a self-punishment thing as well. And she couldn't be angry with her mother because she was always taught and must never answer back to mummy. So she punished herself by pulling her hair out. And we did a few therapy sessions, worked on the emotional stuff relating to her mom, and she stopped pulling her hair out. I had another extreme case with a lady who was obsessed about shaving her legs. And if she was going out for an evening with a boyfriend or a husband, she could spend 2 or 3 hours shaving her legs, checking over and over and over that there wasn't a single blade of hair left, etc., etc. And even it was on her mind all the time. So that was extreme. The particular client that I shared in the new book was a lady who pulled her eyelashes out.
I've heard of that one before.
Yeah. So that's more unusual. But again, it has a similar sort of context. You know, it's emotional pain, it's self-punishment, it's anger, it's frustration because of stuff. She also had claustrophobia, where she was scared of enclosed spaces. And she was also teeth grinding every night. And her dentist was very, very concerned.
I'm a teeth grinder at night.
Okay.
Yes.
So all of this angst was going on inside her, and her way of coping with it was through the teeth grinding, etc., and the trichotillomania. So her subconscious indicated that this was caused by an emotional package from this life, from some past lives, and also from some ancestral trauma.
Okay.
And we worked through some of the emotional pain from this life. We went into a past lifetime where she was a man, probably in the 1800s,
Right.
whose father had established a very successful factory somewhere in England. And father was very rich and it was all doing very well. But then father died. So the young man, which was my client, in the past life took over the business, but it hit hard times. And my client in trance, as she was reliving this past life, was extremely tense all the way through, because the pressure of running the business and all the long hours, but the pressure of knowing that it was sliding bit by bit into bankruptcy, the stress of that was coming through into her body in this lifetime. And eventually the business went bust, the factory, and she remembers in the past life sitting in an office overlooking the empty factory floor where all the machinery had stopped. Nobody was working there after they'd had to close down, shut down, and just sitting there in abject depression, looking out at the empty factory floor. And the stress was so great that after a short time he went home, he had a heart attack and died. So that was a lot of emotional pain, nothing dramatic, but a lot of emotional pain. But in another session, she went into an ancestor's life.
Okay.
And now, she lived in my local area, which in the UK is a coastal area. So there was a tradition of shipping and trawlers. And she relived the life of her great-great-grandfather, who was a trawler man, going out, day after day on the fishing boats with a crew to try to bring fish in. And obviously quite stressful. But on one particular trip, they went out to sea and it was very rough, quite a bad storm. And a young man who was a member of the crew was thrown overboard, fell overboard and drowned.
Yes.
And the guilt that she felt as her great-great-grandfather was immense, because he felt he could have done more to try and save the young man. And then she went into another past life in another session where she was a young African woman in a village, maybe 50 years ago. And there was some sort of civil war going on. And there was so much stress in her village as the men went out to fight, and then some men didn't come back. And again, the emotional pain, the emotional stress of that. Now, we were doing these sessions over several weeks, but after each session, she released the tension and the pain. And she came back and she said, things are getting better. I'm not picking my eyelids at my eyebrows so much. I'm not grinding my teeth. I'm waking up in the morning with less tension in my jaw. I'm feeling less tense in myself. She went into another ancestor's life where this was, again, maybe I would think maybe about 100 years ago, where he was, again, in the ship industry. He was a shipbuilder, and he was working on a ship which was a big steel ship. I don't think it was Titanic, but it was a big steel ship that was coming up for its maiden voyage. And there was a problem in the engine room. Things were not happening. And he had to find the problem and fix it as quickly as possible so the ship could do its maiden voyage, get launched and go out to sea. So again, there was a lot of pressure there, a lot of tension. And you can imagine this man with all this tension inside him in his body was coming out in her body on a night time in a sleep. So he managed to find it, get the job done, and the ship was sailed. And then there was one more past life. Let me just check my notes. She was in Scotland. This was maybe 200 or 300 years ago, living in a very poor village in Scotland as a man. And the man's brother went out to find forage because it was a very bad winter. And the man's brother never came back. So he had to go looking for the brother and found him dead, possibly frozen to death. And so there was all the pain and the sadness of the man's brothers dying, which then we had to release. And of course, there was quite a lot of crying, a lot of tears came through. So as a result of this combination of working in this life, in past lives, and some ancestral trauma, it completely healed everything we were working on. The claustrophobia didn't exist anymore. The trichotillomania, the eyelash pulling, she'd stopped doing that. And also the anxiety and the teeth grinding was gone as well.
I think it's absolutely fascinating, considering I know that things like trichotillomania, like Western medicine, besides maybe trying to treat anxiety, right, it's not very successful. But I have a question for you, just out of genuine curiosity. So you've gone back to these fascinating lives. Now, where I'm trying to figure this out, and I know hypnotherapy works, I know it does, and I think it's fascinating that you're going back to the ancestors and everything. So how does it all show up in this person in this life? Is it that the previous lives, they never really resolve, say, those feelings of guilt, those feelings of anxiety, of depression, and then it just gets carried over into the present life? Like, how does that work? Or if you don't know, even that's okay. I'm just wondering, in my own mind here.
Well, my sense of this, having obviously worked in it for so many years,
it works. Who cares, right? But
well,
still, why do we have this, right?
Yeah.
There's more than one person that would have these lives, as you've seen, carrying this forward.
I mean, first of all, we appear to have lived many, 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 many lifetimes, many past lives. I mean, thousands, perhaps even more than that, past lifetimes. And you can imagine some of those have been very positive, some have been quite neutral, and some have been awful, with awful traumas in. So first of all, it tends to be the trauma past lives that are causing the issues now. But not all of the negative past lives, the trauma past lives, the Buddhist phrase is ripen. They don't all ripen in this present lifetime. Because if they did, we'd never get out of bed in the morning. We'd be carrying so much pain and trauma. You know, you can imagine many, if 100 past lives were to ripen in this present lifetime, it would be too much for us. So only certain past lives appear to ripen for whatever reason. And that's more of an existential sort of question. Nobody knows why particular past lives ripen in this present lifetime. But that's part of that individual soul's growth as a soul, as they go through many lifetimes. So nobody knows how their growth process is and what it's all about. But all we know is that, and this is something another way of looking at it. Now, when we go into hypnosis, our subconscious mind, or as you wonderful Americans and Canadians say, the unconscious mind, that tends to come through very easily.
I say subconscious.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that's good. Well, actually, I suppose Canadians are more English than they are American. So
we are very much so.
We have a long history, don't we? But the subconscious mind is the 99% of the mind, maybe even more than that we don't overtly use on a day-to-day basis. Our subconscious helps us to breathe and to walk without having to think about it. But the phrase I tend to use about the subconscious is it's the engine room of the mind. It's the 99.9% of the mind, which, if we can work with it, and the analogy I use is the mental iceberg. The tip of the iceberg above the waves is the conscious thinking mind. That's the part we analyze with and we think with all day long. But beneath the waves is the bulk of the mind. And the subconscious is the seat of our emotions, the seat of our intuition, the seat of our creativity, the seat of our imagination. And in my opinion, it contains all the memories that go way, way back. But having done this work for so many years, I actually feel the subconscious is even greater than that. Because I believe nowadays, I would never have said this 30 years ago, but nowadays I believe we all have a higher self, which is like an all-knowing, all-wise part of us, which most of us disconnect from as we go through our mundane, left-brain-driven lives, which are obviously programmed just to be left-brain as a result of culture and society and et cetera, et cetera. But there's a higher self there, and that, I believe, either is the subconscious or is intimately connected to the subconscious, and that knows everything there is to know about us. And if we're able to, in trance, in hypnosis, to connect to the subconscious, to the higher self, it will guide us to what we need to do to get the person better. And I've created a regression system over the last 30 years where my client's subconscious knows where we need to go, because I don't know. When a client comes in with an anxiety state or a phobia or an obsessive compulsive disorder or a physical illness, cancer, whatever, I don't know what's caused it. They consciously may not know, but their higher self knows.
Always knows, because I have had a close friend of mine's husband does some type of work that you do, and so I've had quite a few sessions. But I also had hypnotherapy as in my late teens as a means of pain control, because I have a lot of allergies to that type of medication. I had surgery coming up, and I can tell you, anybody that I remember the sessions I've had, not everything, but especially when it started out, and the question's always been, take me back to, for whatever reason, say you're coming there, right? And your higher self, or you want to call it subconscious, whatever, knows instantly what it is. I have found.
Yes. Yeah. And the regression model is that all of our issues as human beings, and I mean all of our issues, come from locked in feelings and emotions from past traumas. So regression is about opening up those traumas to release them. And if we can release them, then the issue gets better. And it doesn't matter what the issue is, whether it's a relationship problem a person's having, whether it's a physical illness, whether it's a sexual problem, whether it's a lack of confidence, a phobia, etc., etc. It doesn't matter what the issue is, the cause, locked in feelings and emotions from the past. So regression is not a fun therapy. We have to go back into stuff which is very unpleasant sometimes. But it can't hurt us. It's in the past. It's just an energy from the past which is still stored inside the person someplace.
Right.
If we can release that. The metaphor I use is the metaphor of an emotional pressure cooker. We all have an emotional pressure cooker inside us. And when we're born, it's already half full with all the crap from past lives and our ancestors' lives.
That makes a lot of sense.
All the crap that happens in this life, we take the lid off the pressure cooker, we put the emotional gunk in there, and we put the lid on, and it bubbles all the time. So we just spend 24 hours a day reacting to that. and reacting different ways. So the regression model is about let the lid out, let the lid off, let some of the pressure out. And as the pressure drops over session after session, the space in that pressure cooker, and that space is healing and well-being. And that's the concept.
I have so many questions as I'm listening to you, because I'm just thinking of so many things. But I do want to get into, because of your latest book, and you were so kind. And I'm going to say it was spirit that led me to this. It was about a half hour before the show, and I thought, I don't think I checked to see if Steve wrote me back. I have a feeling there's an email there. And you so kindly went back and made notes from the last show of things that we sort of talked about, but a lot of things that we didn't. So I really, really appreciate that. And I'd love to get into some of them.
Yeah.
So, because I happened to just mention one of them, and I just saw it now, regression for allergies. So can we talk, because lots of people have allergies. So can we talk about that? And before you answer, I have seen people that have even severe, it's called mast syndrome, where the mast cells are so hyperreactive, like people can go into anaphylactic reaction over things they've never reacted to, like they're practically living on rice because they are so allergic. So I can't wait to hear what your practice has shown you about allergies and how.
Yeah. So there tend to be two types of allergies. They're the airborne allergies, pollen allergies, etc. There tend to be the ingested allergies as well, as you say, food allergies, food allergies, etc. And of course, an allergy is not just an intolerance, it is a severe reaction. And all issues have emotional causes. And the first time I think I worked with allergies in this way was a client in Norway, because I used to be in Norway a lot running hypnotherapy training courses for the Norwegian Hypnosis Academy. And one of the therapists who came on the course to train, she said, I have this pollen allergy, which is absolutely terrible. It absolutely devastates my life from spring through summer. She says, I can't have the doors open, the windows open at home. I can hardly go out. Wherever I'm going, I'm coughing, I'm wheezing, my eyes are streaming, my face is itching. This was a severe allergy. And as we know, Laura-Lee, there are different.
I've had that, by the way, and it is horrific, and it came out of nowhere, it seems. But I can't wait to hear what you're going to share with us, because it came around my 50th birthday, and I never had reactions like this, and it was horrible. I'm going to throw that in there. So can't wait to hear.
The fact that it happened around 50 and it hadn't happened before I tell you some client stories, suggests that it's what I call an anniversary issue. And an anniversary issue is an issue that arises at some stage in our life now, but it connects back to something that's happened usually in a past life at that same age. So let me give you an example. A gentleman came years ago with severe headaches. He was on 16 to 24 painkillers, ibuprofen, whatever, every day. And they were just there all the time. And the subconscious indicated there was only one past life that was causing the headaches. And we regressed into the past life. And he was a member of the mafia in the past life. He was a hood thug. And for whatever reason, he offended the code of the mafia. And it came down from the bosses that we're going to get you, son. We're going to
whack you.
We're going to whack you. Yeah. And he realized he didn't have a future. So he took a shotgun and he put it in his mouth and he blew his brains out.
Oh, now, my goodness.
Obviously, there's the cause of the headaches. That's obvious. But we released the death. We went through the death several times to release its energy. And he came back to me a couple of weeks later and he said, well, the headaches are probably 70% better, but they're still there. So I said, not a problem. We can't cure everything in one session. We have to do several sessions, sometimes quite a lot of sessions. But I guided him into that past life again. He went back through the death, but there was no energy in it. There was nothing there, no fear, nothing. So I thought, well, that past life is cleared. It's released. I asked his subconscious, are there any other past lives? It said, no. Are there any ancestral traumas? No. Anything in this lifetime? No. any birth trauma, because quite often headaches can come from birth trauma. We do a lot of rebirthing in regression, where we go back into the time in the womb and then go through the birth experience in this present life. I had a client who did this last week. A client in where was she? Somewhere in the States. And when she went into the birth experience, she actually went into the fetal position, curled up in the session while she was being born. And the pain, the pressure in her head was immense. So that can often cause migraines and headaches. But there was nothing else to work on. And I couldn't understand what was going on with this, because what else could I do? But something came to me, and I asked him, I said, I looked at his card, his details, while he was in trance, and it was something like he was 28 years old now.
Okay.
Or 28, let's say 29 years old. So I asked him, I said, how old are you when you kill yourself in that past life, when you blow your brains out? And it came to him, he said, I think I'm about 30 years old. So I asked the subconscious. I have a technique I use where my client's finger moves to say yes or no to my questions. And I asked the client's subconscious, does it believe that because he died at the age of 30 in that past life, and I think it was a life before his present lifetime, so there was a lot of strength in it, does it believe that as he's approaching the age of 30 now, that he's going to die horribly again in some way? And the subconscious said yes. So I said to the subconscious, so are you prepared when he gets to 30 now and he doesn't die to let go of the remainder of the head pain? And it said yes.
Wow.
Weird. So it could be for you, Laura Lee, that you have an anniversary issue going on there.
I have often thought, every time you've been on this show, I think I should really book a session with you, or it's probably going to take more than one, because many things you talk about, and I'm pretty open on the show. I you know what, you got to be authentic when you're doing
Absolutely.
this. I've actually been saying, I turned 60 in August. I am healthier now at 60 than when I was 30, my first 30 years of my life. Like I had the weirdest, strangest, unusual health problems, and I am healthier now. So now you got me thinking, like, what anniversaries did I pass in those first 30 years? That, because it is, right? It's so related. It can be related to past lives.
Yeah. And good for you for being honest as well, Laura Lee, because one of my soapboxes is about how important it is for us all to do work on ourselves.
I agree.
Because we've all got emotional baggage. I had a therapy session this morning. I swapped sessions with a colleague. I still work on my stuff. 3 weeks ago, I had a very powerful regression session where I released some emotional stuff from my first year of life, which I didn't know was there. And I was very emotional. This sadness, I was sobbing for a while in the session. But by gum, I felt wonderful afterwards.
But it needed to be released.
It needed to be out. Right? And all of us are reacting to stuff all the time, emotional stuff. If we can release it, we become less reactive. We become calmer, as well as healing issues. Healthier, emotionally, physically, etc. Yeah, spiritually as well.
Hi, Julia Evans. I seen that girl. We missed one. Hang on one sec here, Steve. I always like to say hi to people. Here we got Julia. She's over in the UK. I know I missed somebody else that came in. Please say hi if I missed your name. I'm sorry, because we got some questions too. But go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, the other thing about allergies, first time I worked with it was a client in Norway who had this severe pollen allergy. And as I say, for months, spring and summer was desperate for her. She had no life. She couldn't go out. And she just spent all day wheezing, scratching, sniffling, etc. And her subconscious indicated there was one past life causing the allergies. And she went into a past life where she was in a death experience. And I will say that most past life therapy is about releasing death trauma.
That makes sense.
I would say about 60% of past life therapy is releasing death trauma. But this was very dramatic. So she was in trance and she was retching and as if she was going to vomit at any second. And she was shaking and turning around and anxious. And she's exploring this, as I say, with her eyelids closed in trance. She was dying of starvation in the past life. But As she was dying of starvation, she was desperately grabbing hold of grass and just shoving it in her mouth, trying to eat grass in a desperate effort to stay alive. But of course, she was just vomiting it all back up again. Now, you could say, well, okay, we released the trauma, but what her subconscious was saying is this: I'm dying of starvation, I'm trying to eat grass, grass equals death. Pollen coming out equals grass, grass equals death. So subconscious all the time, as the pollen is in the air and grass is growing, is saying, I'm going to die horribly because the grass is growing. And that was the connection. So we released all that trauma, completely cured the allergy. And I checked with her 2 or 3 years later. I sent her an email. I said, how's it going? She said, I've got my life back. She said, there's not a single trace of the allergy.
Wow.
So I have a client in Canada at the moment, in Calgary, beautiful lady, wonderful lady, very down to earth, and she's become quite a friend because she's such a lovely person to talk with. Her allergy caused by past lives where there's been killings in past lives, but also this life. When she was a child, they lived on a farm with a family, and it was brutal because they were chopping chickens' heads off day after day.
I witnessed that as a 3-year-old.
Right, exactly. And she was a sensitive 3-year-old, a sensitive child.
Me too. Mm-hmm.
If a dog was sick, the father would just blow its head off, kill it. I mean, they didn't think that this was wrong. They just lived that life, the parents, because that's what you did on the farm. But a little girl watching all that bloodshed and brutality. So again, we've released a lot of emotions. Her allergies, I think, are about 80% better at the moment.
That's just, it never fascinates me when I talk about the subject with somebody that does this. Like Carrie Fass is just saying, trauma connected to a belief from a past life. But we got some interesting comments and questions here, so hang on. Yeah. So Zizan Dragon, or Kevin, says, Steve, do you think that in meditative or dream state, you can tap into past lives? I've had dreams and such that unlock some past life questions.
Definitely. Please remember that trance or hypnosis is very similar to meditation. I often say meditation and hypnosis are sisters. So when we're in a meditative state, we're in an inner state of awareness, an inner state of focus. And that basically is what trance or hypnosis is. It's often characterized by relaxation as well. But we all go into trance 24 times a day when we daydream, when we focus on a book, when we watch a movie, when we drive a car, when we drift in and out of sleep. So for the question, yes, you can. What you've got to do is be careful, though, because if you go back into a past life which is horrible, then it's not nice doing it on your own. So if you make the intention before you meditate that I'm going to go back into either a positive past life or a neutral past life, just to get some insights, perhaps. And then imagine that you're in trance and just imagine traveling back in your mind. Just imagine you're going back someplace, back down a road of time or a line of time, and just see what comes through. Remember, though, that most of the time when we first start doing this work, we think we're making it up. Our first thing, because we're still consciously analyzing, and our first standpoint, well, I must be making this up. I must be making this up.
I felt that way at the first time. I feel like I'm making this up.
Yeah. So let that go. Just let that go and go with whatever is coming.
I'm glad that you put that out there for people, Steve, because one of the things, I'm sorry, I do have a delay tonight, guys. I'm sorry. We're doing our best here. I said that to Steve ahead of time, so thank you for your understanding. Because what I'm thinking of, and I've seen this before, no, not necessarily with hypnotherapy, but even with meditation, and I've heard of it happening. I've never had it happen myself, but doing the Akashic Records, for example, that when you're going, say, very deeply into that type of meditation, or I know if it's particularly traumatic for some people with the work they're doing, the healing work on their own, they can get stuck in there, if you will. You almost need like a buddy on the outside to kind of remind you. And
Yes.
that's what reminded me of what you were saying. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I would always suggest having a credible therapist, an experienced therapist to help you along. Because, you know, you've got to be cautious. This can be very deep, and some stuff in past lives is very unpleasant. So you don't always want to be handling that on your own. So that's why I say, if you're going to do it yourself, then make that intention. I'm just going to see if I can get back into an interesting past life, a neutral past life. I mean, I run past life regression group workshops, but we just do this. Everybody is going for an interesting past life, maybe to get some insights. It's not about therapy. And it's possible. And also positive past lives. That's the forgotten aspect of past life regression. Going back into a past life where you can bring a quality, a resource from a past life into your life now. And that can be wonderful. That really can be life enhancing.
We don't hear about that. I'm so glad you brought that up. If you can hold that thought, because we got a comment and we do have a question. So Kathy had shared with the allergies. She says, I'm allergic to everything, environmental, medications, and food. Myself as well, Kathy. But she says I should be in a bubble. The whole body is reacting, it seems like, right?
Very much so. Well, I mean, what I will say is, please remember as well that the bigger the problem, the bigger the cause. So if you have a really big allergy problem, the chances are there's quite a bit of stuff under the surface that's causing it. So, you know, it's not always cured in one session. I will say, however, that there is an NLP allergy cure technique.
Is
NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Not many NLP practitioners know about it. I learnt it 30 odd years ago, and hardly anybody knows about it. But that can be successful in one session. But if it doesn't work, it usually means the emotional stuff under the surface is too deep, and NLP just won't work. But I would suggest if you're a bit worried and think, oh dear, I've got a severe issue, see if an NLP practitioner can do an NLP allergy cure, which isn't about going into the traumas and anything like that, because that may help, or it may soften it. But having said that, for me, I'm always very much about going into the traumas, because it doesn't hurt you going back into the past. Nobody dies from crying. You know, it's just a release of energy. You've just got to have a therapist who knows what they're doing, who can help you through it.
Well, I love that, because Mish asked a really interesting question. This is why I started. Can future trauma be anything?
And there is a school of thought that you can go into future lifetimes. It's called FLP, future life progression. It's not something that I specialize in. I don't like to do it, but there is a wonderful English therapist, Anne Yersch, Anne Jirsch, Anne Yersch, very experienced with future life stuff, and she's got a good website, and she has worked with a lot of top stars and things like that. So future life progression is usually done not so much to look at trauma in the future, but mainly to create what you want to have in the future, you could say. But because we don't understand time, and although the subconscious it reacts as though time is linear, but you know, there is this idea that everything's happening all at the same time. So if we can do past life, we can do future life at the same time. I did used to run some past and future life group workshops where we do a past life regression with the group, and then we'd have a break and then do a future life progression. But I stopped doing it because it was so damned depressing, because people were saying, I was taking people like 300 years into the future, and people in my groups were saying, oh, it's awful, you know, we live underground, there's been massive wars, there's no spirituality, you can't go out in the sun, you get radiation burns. And I was thinking, hang on a minute, I thought we were in the age of Aquarius where it's all going to start getting better. So it really depressed me, actually, because a lot of people were saying that. Other people were saying, oh, they were getting different. But so I stopped doing it. But I spoke to one or two colleagues in the UK.
I have an idea on it. I can't wait to hear what you're going to say.
They were doing the same. And in their groups, their people were saying everything's wonderful in 500 years' time, and we're all, age of Aquarius, we're all dancing with flowers, etc., etc., and there's no wars. I'm thinking, well, why are my groups getting the unpleasant stuff, and why are others getting the happy stuff? Is it that they're just reflecting the fact, my group are reflecting the fact I'm just a miserable bugger? I don't know. So, but what are your thoughts? Because I'm not sure why two different.
So what I think, okay, so I am a believer that time is a man-made thing, that past, present, and future, from working with the other side, there is no such thing. It is happening all at the same time. And then once you start to wrap your mind around this, then my mind kind of goes, okay, I got to stop, because it just gets timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly all over the place. Yeah. But the reason why I think it's very difficult to tap into the future, and people, this is just my thoughts and connecting with spirit, is that there's many different alternative timelines, because unless it's a major focus piece in your lifetime, say for a future life, right, we have free will. We can create it. So like, even if we don't like the way our life is going, right, we can stop and make the decision whether we're going to do some inner healing, we're going to do some regression therapy, whatever we're going to do. I'm just using that as an example, right? Yeah. But there's all these potentialities for the future, and we create them. So depending on the group that you had, maybe in that particular timeline that they tapped into, and I really believe there is, and then you can even get into the multiverse theory too, right? So are they tapping into a particular timeline? Right. There's a theory out there that every single thing that we've heard might happen, could happen. We, like, when, say, the year 2000, like everything was going to stop, the world was going to be awful. I can't confirm or deny it, but it makes sense to me. Was there a potential timeline like that that we could have tapped into? But maybe humanity as a whole decided, no, we're going to go in a different direction. Because I really believe as human beings, we don't realize, and not from an egotistical perspective, but how incredibly powerful we are as human beings. And I think your work shows it alone, Steve, about how incredible we are, how many lifetimes we have, and we can do anything we want. The human body is incredible. We can heal ourselves. Your work is showing this kind of stuff. So where I'm going with this is, did they tap into a particular type of timeline? And maybe it was the people you were working with. Well, I'm going to use your words. No, it wasn't because you were a miserable bugger. You're not a miserable bugger. But maybe it's people, right? Maybe they were experiencing a different version of what's really supposed to happen. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If I don't even know if I've made sense there, but to me, that's...
Thanks for that. Right. Yeah. I mean, we don't understand time, and there are so many different theories. And I mean, thanks for your comments, because it may be that very much something like that's going on. When you look at Dolores Cannon, of course, with her work,
I was thinking of her.
She was towards the end of her life saying that there's a new earth, and people will be divided almost. It's a bit like the rapture, I suppose, in a Christian terms. Some people will go up to heaven, the rest of us are going to be stuck down here. But it may be that energetically, people whose energies, and this is, if this is true, this is another reason for having therapy, for working on yourself, because if you can clear your shit, if you can release the baggage you're carrying, your energies change, your vibrations change, you move into a higher vibrational state, which may mean that you don't have to go to continue in the lower energies. And therefore, it could be that those people on that in those workshops were people who hadn't done any work on themselves or enough, and therefore in future lives they've continued in the old way. Whereas those people who are working on themselves are able to lift off and experience much more positive future lives.
That's exactly what I was thinking. You got it exactly, right? And then we all come together in groups. We don't always know why, but I think you hit the nail on the head, depending on what frequency or radio frequency we're putting. I would like to call it that way for people listening, like a radio frequency, right? And we like attracts like on this planet. So maybe the particular group that you had, and even though, like you said, going into a past life that we're going to maybe, look at something more positive, right? Maybe that's where their frequency was. Maybe there was a lesson in it for them as a group had they continued, or even as far as they did continue, but we had the choice whether to learn that lesson or not, right? Like take that little bit of knowledge from it. And if you're thinking the future can be really awful and it's horrible and this is what's coming, it's pretty hard to feel good about that. I could see why like you shared, maybe I should stop because it was depressing, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in those days, I didn't have as much understanding as I do nowadays. So nowadays, I would think around it much more deeply, as you're obviously doing as well. And it may be, but having said that, I mean, everything, there's a reason for everything.
Yes.
I'm trying to put a positive spin on this now to assuage my guilt for those poor people who came on the workshop and were depressed like me. But could it be that having had those,
it wasn't you. It wasn't you. I don't think it was.
It could be that it's a stepping stone for them to change. It could be, as you say, that they reflect upon that possible future life. It may be that they'll read Dolores Cannon 10 years later and start to think, oh, well, actually, I was going in the wrong direction. Maybe I need to raise my vibrations now because I've seen how the future is and I don't want that. So perhaps there's perhaps it's
we're not taught.
Perhaps it's helped them to grow.
Plus, the other thing is where I was going with it, and it kind of got off on a tangent, is we're not taught as human beings how incredibly powerful we are. And you'll hear me say on many different shows, different places, no matter where I am, even privately with friends, I've said this so many times that, our words, our thoughts, and our emotions are so powerful. And again, we go back to the work that you're doing. And so people don't realize that when we focus on that, when we do that inner work, and it's a lifelong journey. Like thank you for sharing that you had a session last week and, it had to do with your first year of life. Because I think that when we're doing this kind of work and we're working with people, we need to be authentic and as truthful as we possibly can be, right? And so it's helpful for people to hear that you went through this. But back to human beings, we don't realize that we have the potential to change it, right? To change your life, to change the way you're going, to change your future. And I just marvel at the tools that you're providing people, with the work that you're doing, that too, it's got to be absolutely life-changing for people, to come to you with the issues they have. And then and I love that you said it may not just be one session. Some of these things are pretty deep. They need a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful.
If a person is able to regress, not everybody can regress, which can be frustrating.
I don't know if that cut out or cut again or not. Sorry.
No, I think you said it can be very powerful. It's very powerful, the being able to change.
I'm here. Sorry. Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Back.
Yeah, you're just breaking up a little bit, but I can hear you. But no, it's.
I'm sorry, guys. It's the snow. It's the
snow. Yeah. No, you're back. It's okay. So yeah, it's about.
I'm here. I'm not going to.
It's about working on ourselves to heal ourselves, and in a way, the work it becomes spiritual as well, because a client may come with a specific issue, a specific problem, but that specific problem may have deep roots. And if we're able to dig all those roots out, they don't just heal the specific problem, they heal in themselves. And what then happens is their energy field calms down. And one of the most wonderful side effects, there are two wonderful side effects, especially with regard to past life regression. One is people often lose a fear of dying. Because if you go through several past life deaths, you realize that, it's horrible, but you're going to get reborn. So we are eternal. So they lose a fear of dying. And so many people are held back from that in this life. But the second benefit is that they become less reactive. And what that means is that instead of reacting to things in a big way, and everything's a big issue, and we introduce all the drama in our lives, our reactivity drops down. And when we are in a less reactive state, we are calmer in the world. And what happens is we are sending that calm energy out into the world. Because as you said earlier, everything we're sending everything out. Everything's a form of a thought, an energy. So if we're able to become more calm in ourselves, and my spiritual practice is the practice of oneness or pure consciousness. Some people would say, or I call it non-duality, which is where we don't go into beliefs about anything. We just become aware of who I am inside, and that I am just an energy, as everything is, and that we're all connected, and that we can change those energies. And if our minds are calmer, we send that out into the world becomes calmer. So for me, having good therapy is a way of helping to heal the world as well.
See, Sun Dragon was saying he loves that, Steve. I saw it, but we're in such a good conversation. I didn't want to cut in. I have to do the station ID. Thank you for the reminder, Kevin. So if you're just tuning in, you're listening to UFO Paranormal on United Public Radio Network. You can listen to us in the United States on the Gulf Coast in Mississippi and 105.3 FM and 107.7 FM in the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana, where we are broadcasting out of. I am the host of this show. It's the Angel Rock. I'm Laura Lee Potvin, my friend, and he is just absolutely fascinating. I could do months of shows with you about this because it's such a fascinating conversation. Is Steve Burgess, and we're talking about hypnotherapy and his latest book. And he's actually written, Steve, like you said, some I don't want to word it the wrong way, but almost like cases that you've worked with that are, really relating to real life. I know, if I remember correctly, last time you were on, there's a bit of humor, I think you said as well with this book, is there not?
Oh, yes. I've tried to, because I do have a sense of humor, and I can't help myself sometimes. So I'm known, when I run my therapy training courses, I have therapists I train from all around the world, and my courses are known for fun. So because, if a training course is boring, nobody learns much. But I've tried to inject a bit of humor and some humor in the book. And in fact, one of my English reviewers of the book, a lady who reviewed the book who's in England, and she wrote in her review that it is tea-spittingly funny, which is a great English word.
I love it.
I've also added in there some of my own stuff as well, a little bit more about me, because I'm always reticent about going on about me, because I'm just a jobbing therapist, and for me the most important thing is the work that I'm doing. But some people want to know a bit more, and one of my team, because I have a team of therapists who I've trained in my regression system, and one of my team, she said, when I was writing it, she said, there's not enough of you in there, Burgess. So I said, okay. I added a little bit more about my spiritual path and some of my shamanic training, and also about my first introduction to therapy when I was demonstrated on by the therapy trainer in front of a group. And that was remarkable. So I've added stuff about me to try to make it a bit bigger as a book, really, as opposed to just client cases.
Well, I love it. Well, some of the topics we didn't get to the last time I'd love to talk to you about. You've got surrogate regression I'd love to ask you about. But what about alien contact and abduction regression? I'd love to talk with you about that if you're open to it.
Yeah. And perhaps we can then
lead I lose you there? I'm setting up Instagram.
We can lead through from that into some very new stuff that's been happening over the last 2 or 3 years with clients, and then go on to the surrogate stuff, because that's very new. I
love it.
First of all, I started getting occasionally clients who would come to me who maybe had contact experiences with extraterrestrials, and of course it's difficult to say whether it's real or not, so I always sit on the fence a little bit. But I think the first time this happened was a young 15-year-old girl who, when she'd been getting anxiety and depression and panic attacks, she was struggling at school, she was disassociating a lot, and she was unhappy in herself. And her mum brought her to see me, and the girl said, when I was 7, something weird happened at my grandma's house, and I don't know if it was real or not, but I've never been the same since. So I mean, obviously, from my perspective, when a girl said that, I'm usually thinking this could be childhood sex abuse, because we work with that a lot.
That's the first thing, yeah.
But I didn't say anything, but a subconscious took her back. When I guided her in trance, in hypnosis, I asked her to go back to when she was 7, and she remembered she was staying overnight at Granny and Grandpa's house. They put her to bed, and she woke up because there were bright lights shining underneath the door into her bedroom. And she got out of bed. I don't know how long she'd been asleep for, opened the door, and there was a big figure standing in the light. And she said it was almost like this big blobby. I sort of think it was something like the Michelin Man figure, you know, this big, fat, spacious figure. And he's standing there looking at me with big eyes, and he's telling me that he's a friend, she said. And so, okay, so she said, he wants me to go with him. And he takes my hand, and he's just said, it's all going to be great. We're going to have an adventure together. And she felt very happy. They floated across the room. They floated out through the walls of the house together. And she said, there's a spacecraft, a spacecraft there out in the sky. And we float up to that. And she was euphorically happy. She was incredible. I mean, it was an amazing experience until they got into the spacecraft. And she said there are other smaller beings there, and they're not very nice. And he just disappears, and he leaves me to them. Oh, wow. What then happened is she remembered them sort of operating on her. They tried to knock her out, but it didn't work. They laid her on a steel table. They put some sort of helmet on her head so they could only see her eyes, and they injected a laser into one of her eyes. These beings, I think they were greys, actually. There were small extraterrestrials, and she was in a lot of pain, and they couldn't understand why she had pain. It shouldn't be hurting. So they gave her some like medicine to try and knock her out. And that made her very woozy. She felt there was some surgery going on in one of her hands and all sorts of stuff. They put something in one of her hands, and then they came out of that, let her relax for a while. And then she remembered being drifted back in a dopey, dreamy state by one of these smaller beings. And then she remembered almost waking up in her grandmother's house, screaming and screaming and screaming. And this being, as her grandmother came in the door, she saw him going off into the distance, saying, "You'll be happy now, and we'll see you again." Now, there was immense relief for her. Having experienced that, she knew that something had happened which had caused the anxiety. So immediately there was a great healing. And Mom was what sat in on the session and was amazed by this. And she said it just makes so much sense. Now, this was, in all honesty, that, you know, when I run regression training courses nowadays, in my advanced regression course, we look at working in regression with alien contact experiences, because therapists need to know about it. This just happened to me 30 years ago, and it was probably the first time. So I never saw the girl again. If she was a client, I'd be asking so many questions. You know, what is this thing that is in the hand? Is there still something there? Has she been contacted since then? Because my experience, usually it happens. Yeah, if you're contacted once, they keep coming back for you. In many cases, I don't think in all. But so nowadays, I would deal with it quite differently. But it was an eye opener for me. And this girl, you know, she's not bonkers. She's a normal girl, a schoolgirl who's having anxiety-based problems. And that was the first time. So in the book, I write about a Sky TV documentary I took part in, where there was a whole family in England which had been taken on board a spacecraft and had missing time, and I regressed the mom. That's actually still on YouTube nowadays, a documentary called The Real 4400.
I have to look that up.
And I write about that in the book and other extraterrestrial cases. So that's one aspect of the ET stuff. I don't call them aliens, because that's, to me, negative, because some of these extraterrestrials are very, very beneficial and appear to be, you know, positive rather than negative, but there obviously are the negative ones.
Well, we've got somebody in the chat, Carrie, and I have missing time. Joe Montaldo, I think we've talked about this before, but Joe Montaldo runs ICAR, International Center for Alien Research, and he has on the website, I think it's icar.net. It's a 20 plus year study of people with red hair, green eyes, Rh negative blood, because that set of genetic traits did not exist up to before 70,000 years ago in the human being's genetic profile. So
Oh,
just looking at how many people have had stories of potential off-world experiences, abductions, or have seen, off-world spacecrafts, if you will. Now, I
yeah.
don't have any of those things, but my mother has all three. Now, she doesn't believe in any of these things. I have missing time, just blinking. And I've lived in this city my entire life. I lost an hour and a half. My car was in the opposite direction to the way I was traveling. I can still tell you the building I was in front of. It was rural outside of the city. And I remember opening my eyes because my phone was ringing and it was my hubby Dell calling me. I was only supposed to be gone for a couple minutes. And he was going, "Where the heck are you? Like, did you get in an accident or something?" And I had to say, "I don't know." And I
Mm,
had to look. So I've had that. That sounds very familiar. Just even watching, it's like I could see what happened to this girl. And Carrie here has shared, I had a regression on an abduction when I was 3 years old. Very overwhelming, but it proved to me something did happen.
mm, yeah.
Hmm.
So this is a real
Hmm.
phenomena, Laura Lee. People were too quick to. Um, okay, there's nothing wrong with being skeptical and discriminating, but people are too quick just to jump on these people's throats and say, "Oh, you're just making it all up," or "There's something wrong with you." And I mean, there's a great Australian regression therapist, hypnotherapist, who works with children. I can't remember her name, and she's
Oh,
written a
wow.
book, I think, called The New Earth, I think she calls it. And thousands of children she'd worked with who were all saying the same thing about their
Yeah.
alien contact experiences, and they've never met each other. But there's these common themes, and you can't. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
10,000 children or 18,000, whatever 10,000 children cannot all be imagining it and making it up. And it's that same concept as was it Homer or Plato said about ghosts, that it's easy to dismiss ghosts, but if one story of ghosts is real, there are such things as ghosts. Therefore, if one of these countless people around the world who claim to have had these experiences, and they must be real. And this Australian therapist said, and I find the same. All these people are normal people. They're living in functioning families. They're not doped up to the eyeballs on heroin or marijuana or whatever. They are functioning people. They have jobs. They have mortgages.
Mhm.
They're not bonkers. There's nothing weird about them. They're just people who know something unusual has happened. And it's so easy for people to dismiss this. And of course, the powers that be don't want us to know.
Mhm.
Why don't they want us to know? A, because virtually every religion on earth would be smashed to pieces.
Agreed. Mhm.
And B, it would prove to people that there's something greater than governments. And I think
Yes.
people
So
would then go,
Mish is in Australia and she thinks the author is Mary Ann, is it Rodwell? I think is the name. I put it up on the screen for you, Steve.
think
Uh,
it could be Mary Rodwell. I think it could be.
yeah.
And I think the book is called The New Earth. Yes.
Okay. Now,
Um,
Kathy's adding, I believe that I have had experience, but don't remember it as. Mhm.
yeah. So this is why it's important that the therapist you work with, a regression therapist, just stays on. That's right. Mary was a nurse. Thanks, Mish. Shelley, it's important that the therapist is on the fence, because the therapist hasn't got to lead the client. Too many regression therapists, well, not too many, some are not very skilled, and they can lead clients by implanting things unconsciously, and the client then believes it. So everything that has to come through in a regression session has to come from the client and from their subconscious, not
Because you
from the therapist.
contaminate the results,
That's
especially
it.
when you're dealing with a story,
Yes.
this phenomena, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
very much so. So, um, But so this, I mean, it's just one aspect of the stuff that I work in. I say I devote a whole chapter in the new book to that. But what I would like to share, if I may, Laura, going on from that, unless there's any more questions.
No, I've got tons here. Like, you gave me such a great list. Like I said, Steve, I could have you on probably every show for about 6 months and barely get to everything I'd love to ask. So please continue whatever you'd like to share.
Well, this is again about the life on Earth nowadays, if you like. So about 3 years ago, now I'd always had the occasional client who, in a regression session, felt that they'd come from another planet. They'd had a past life on another planet as an extraterrestrial. The strongest one I had was a gentleman who was from Croatia, who, in a regression session, felt that he crash landed on Earth in his flying saucer or whatever it was. He survived, but he spent the rest of the time, I don't know how long, terrified down here on Earth, desperately trying to hide from the people on Earth, because he knew full well what would happen if they found him, aka the American government. And he was terrified, but he kept saying, what is wrong with them down here? What is wrong with them down here? It doesn't have to be like this. Over and over, he said, it doesn't have to be like this. He'd come from a planet where higher beings lived in intelligence and love and were telepathically communicating. And he comes down to planet Asylum and is in the middle of all the insanity that we live with, that we think is normal down here, all the brutality. So he was terrified, but after some time, his home beings came for him and found him and beamed him back up. So it was like E.T. phone home. And he felt an incredible wave of relief when he went back. And that always stayed with me. And then 2 or 3 years ago, I started to have clients who, in a regression session, instead of going back into a past life on Earth, were starting to have past lives on other planets as other life forms. And it was happening week after week after week after week. And it was not just me, it was my team as well. And it was a trend. It was extraordinary how it was happening. And, you know, clients were having past lives as energy forms, where they were not solid form. They were in an energy, like a gaseous maybe. One lady had a past life on a blue planet where everybody was blue and tall, and they would move around different planets to learn. But when they came back from Earth, they had to go through a cleansing process of going into the blue water to cleanse all the negative energies away and stuff like that. And it was shocking for me, because it was so, and again, my team and me, we don't lead people, and our clients don't talk to each other before they see us. You know, it was just happening week after week. And then I read Dolores Cannon's book, The New Earth.
I'm thinking that again, like, were you dipping into the theta wave level? Is that how deep you guys were dipping in?
No, because I'm reading that, what happened for her, like me, she was a bulk standard regression therapist all of her career. And then as she got older, after many years, she started to have clients come to her who had past lives on other planets.
And gaseous forms and the beginning of the Earth forming. And
So when I read that, I thought, well, maybe I'm the new Dolores Cannon. But I was thinking about having a pink rinse on my hair and wearing an old granny cardigan. But, you know, it's weird that it happened the same way for me as for her. And so now, what's the reason for this? I feel there is a deeper reason. Now, I can't say this for certain. And when I talk about this, I start to sound like either a new age guru or something. And I don't mean to do that, because I never will preach at people. My take on this is that we are going through an awakening on Earth, a great awakening. And we need it right now, because things are so very, very bad here on Earth. Yes. You know, there is so much going wrong that is leading us into, well, a very bad future. if we don't stop it. And my take on this is that, and I was asking my clients as well, when they were coming through with these past lives on other planets, I was asking the subconscious if they were star seeds. And in every case, the subconscious would say yes, it would signal yes, which means that my clients have been reborn at this time on Earth in order to transmit or channel those higher energies from their higher beings, their home beings, in order to help raise the vibrations here on Earth, because that then helps to raise the collective above the mundane and above the fear that the governments and the elites want us to live in. Because when we're living in fear, we are feeding into the energy all the time. So my take on this is that this is a process that is happening from higher beings who are trying to help us to raise our vibrations. And my clients don't have to do anything. They don't have to say, I am a being from another planet and I can transmit these energies. No, it just means it's just almost like they are a candle which is being lit on Earth. So there's more light here on Earth just by their presence.
Have you not heard though that it's kind of a buzzword, but the type of work that say I do and Carrie Lynn and any of us is capable of doing it. I'm not trying to make myself sound like I'm special or something. I don't mean that, but it's light workers, right? And so I get together with two of my closest friends and we connect with spirit on the other side and get quite a bit of messages from the other side and names. And sometimes they send us down a rabbit hole and we've never been led astray. And like sometimes we do some healing work. We know we're not the only ones, like we're adding to that. But since I've been meeting with them over quite a few years, what spirit's been showing me is, and I don't know if this will resonate or not, or for anybody listening, is, you know, when you're in a really dark room, or you've seen on a movie or something, right? It's so black you can't even see your hand in front of your face. And we'll say it's a movie. And the character reaches in their pocket and goes, oh my goodness, I just found some matches. And they light the match. And it's just one tiny little match. How far that light goes. I'm getting goosebumps right now. It's not cold. I always say that's my sign for truth. That's almost what this feels like. Yes, people don't have to be aware that they've come from another planet or a previous life like that. They've just agreed to be here, exactly what you said, to help raise the frequency and the vibration here, because I do believe we are moving into a new era as well. But it makes sense to me, right? And for whatever reason, you and your team, maybe with the work that you're doing, and it feels almost like you were able to go to another level with the hypnotherapy, because that's when it seems like also when Dolores Cannon really started to tap into these very unique experiences. But to me, right, like you don't need everybody to be and I don't care for the word, but people will understand it, a light worker. You almost just need it. You know what I mean? That light will go really far when whether it's the proverbial match or it's the higher vibration to help spread that frequency. Does that make sense in any way? Or
I think there's a couple of things from that. I think one is, and I'm finding this with a few of the clients, they are able to then almost connect with their home beings.
Each other.
And they receive downloads from those home beings. They receive information at a subconscious level.
And we find each other too, which is very strange, but we do.
Okay, good way of looking at it. Yeah. So I think that's one thing that is happening. They are downloading these higher energies. But secondly, they feel better in themselves. They feel calmer because they know that they're not alone. Also, they understand why being on Earth in their life has been so bloody difficult, because they're not from here. They're from a higher place, and they come down to Planet Asylum and they don't understand what the hell's going on. It doesn't make sense, because obviously we're not aware usually as we get, our memories get wiped as we come down into a new life. So they're always very sensitive. They don't fit in at school. They can't fit in with people. Things hurt them more deeply than those people who are not from other planets, who have been on Earth for many thousands of lives and are used to the nonsense down here, you could say, even though we never get used to it. So there is a healing that comes through as well. And I will say that This comes through spontaneously. None of my clients are like massive egos who want to say, I'm from another planet.
Yeah.
In the case, they're as shocked as I am when it comes through. But it gives them a sense of comfort, and possibly, and I don't usually say this to them, but my thought is, could they be here as a sleeper cell for the future? In other words, could it be that at some stage in the near future, the whole of that potential will be activated through them? In other words, they won't just be a candle that's being lit on Earth, there'll be a firework, because the home beings will say, now is the time. Now is the time we have to raise the vibrations fully and help people to raise above all the nonsense.
That makes perfect sense, Steve. It really, really does. And you're right. Like, I can't tell you how many people I have met over my years on this planet. Like, that's all I ever heard growing up. You're too sensitive. You're too sensitive. Like, and I was like I can honestly, and again, not special, but I have to be careful because I can really tap into people's pain, especially when it's emotional pain, physical pain. Like, before my son passed away, he had severe autism, and he would say to me, "Mama, my knee hurts. Feel it, mommy, feel it." And he would know because I close my eyes and you can scan it, and I'd feel a temperature difference, for example, right? But even to tap into what, and I'm not special, like, there's lots of people on this planet, and I think we're all finding each other and coming together too. But we can really tap into the pain that's going on in this planet. I really, really believe that. And we need to shift something. Something has to give, right? I think we're at the cusp right now. Even before we started the show, like you said, this is a number 1 year in numerology. I think this may be the beginning of it all. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think things will get worse before they get better. But I think, I'm hoping that enough people are becoming more aligned now with everything, and that is helping the whole process along. But we don't know. So I think, as much as anything else, actually, going back to something you said earlier as well, Laura Lee, was, we don't know just how powerful we are. And we've never been taught that we are sovereign beings in the universe. And if we set out our standpoint as sovereign beings in the universe, it may be that we can change anything. And as you said earlier, there are all these different timelines. We can create the future. What tends to happen is we get bogged down in emotional pain and in drama. And that's another reason why, if we can heal that, we don't get bogged down in that. We're able to look up and to see the clouds, as opposed to looking down at the shit that we're standing in all day long, because things are so horrible. So I think that we can change the future by standing in our power and getting out of fear and sending that out as an intention to the universe day after day. I think is a powerful process. And I know there are spiritual teachers who would talk about that in much more intelligent depth than I can. But I think that's the case. I think we have to learn that we have power, and not exactly take control, but to use that power in a positive way.
With great power comes great responsibility, right? Wasn't that from Spider-Man? Because we didn't get into, I wanted to ask you about surrogate regression. We were going to get into hypnosis for childbirth, spiritual attachments. We've got a few minutes. Is there any of those topics from that list you can kind of give people a little teaser, if you will? You guys, you have to go out and buy his book, because we've barely scratched the surface. I probably going to be hitting Steve up, but mind you, we're booking into, I think, almost June. But I would love to have you come back on, because every time you do, Steve, people just so resonate with what you're saying and really are enjoying the conversation we're having.
All right, thank you. I'll tell you what I would like to share about then is
perfect. Pick whatever one.
Maybe we'll leave the surrogate stuff and the spirit attachment stuff to another time.
Okay.
Let's talk about, and I'm just getting my notes here because I've got so many thousands of past lives.
I'm so grateful. You're the only one that's ever done this before, like as a returning guest. I'm really grateful that you did this. Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about a relationship issue. How many minutes have we got, Laura Lee? Because I can time this.
We got almost 10. I want to give you a minute or
Brilliant.
two at the end just to be able to let people know where to find you. So
Absolutely.
it's 7:50 and we just got to be off air by 8 so that our next show can come on. So
Okay. Relationship issues, because most of us have got issues in relationships, haven't we? And one of the nice things about, if you're able to work on yourself and heal your stuff, then you take less drama into relationships, because drama can destroy relationships, as we know. What tends to happen if there's a lot of drama in relationships, then it starts off with lots of love, but the drama eventually just chips away and chips away and chips away the love that you have for a person until there's no love left. And that's so sad. So I had a client who was insanely jealous. Now, he was a man in the UK, and he was so insanely jealous that his first wife had divorced him, and his new partner, his new wife, was absolutely getting sick of his jealousy. If they'd gone to the pub together, and as you know, everybody in England goes to the pub every night and has a few pints, and then on the way home buys fish and chips from the fish and chip shop and puts them in newspaper and eats them out of newspaper. We all do that in England. That's what we all do. But if he was at the pub with his wife, and his wife happened to say to the barman, the weather's been awful today, hasn't it? Talk about the weather for a minute. He would sit her back down at the table and he would play hell with her. You were flirting with him. You were saying this. You were obviously looking at him. I could see that you were flirting with him. And this was terrible for her. And she just about got to the stage where she couldn't take any more. She'd had enough of it. Now, we did work on his childhood. He'd had a terrible childhood. His father was a violent alcoholic sailor. And when he came from sea, he would just get drunk. He would beat his mother up. He would be alcoholic, would beat the children. His mom was terrified of him. She was all over the place as well. When his father was away at sea, his mom was sleeping around with other men. One day, he actually walked into the bedroom and found his mom having sex with another man. So all of this is going on. His mom and dad separated. The stepdad, who lived with the mom who came in, was brutal. He would force him and his brother to beat hell out of each other. Every Sunday morning, they had to fight until one of them drew blood.
Oh my goodness.
So his inner child was in agony. You know, we all have an inner child, Laura Lee. Don't matter how old, how grey, how wrinkly we become, there's a little boy or a little girl inside us. And how that inner child feels is how we live in the world. And so we did some work on his childhood, and he felt a lot better. But one morning, he came back in for a therapy session with me, and he burst in the door, and he was furious, absolutely furious. I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "My wife, I'm going to go and kill my wife's boss. In fact, I wasn't going to turn up for the session, but I wanted to honour you for the session, Steve. But after this session, I am going to go and kill him because of what happened last night." I said, "Hang on a minute, what happened?" And apparently, the wife had told my client at breakfast that morning that the previous night was the work's Christmas party. And she'd gone out with the people from work. Her boss was a bit of a ladies' man. And he was always making comments to all the women and my client's wife as well, sexist comments. But at the do last night, he'd had a few beers and he came on to my client's wife and was hugging her and trying to kiss her and tapping her on the bum and making,
just being gross.
Yeah, gross stuff. Now, she actually told him that at breakfast that morning, which was, she should never have said anything, but she was unhappy. And he just went bonkers and he said, "I'm going to kill him. I thought I'll come here, I'll see you. But when I leave him, I am going to go to that work and I am going to rip his neck out. I'm so angry." So I said, "Hang on, okay, let's talk about this." Now, I did some what we call rapport building very quickly. So I became angry. I talked fast as he talked fast. But little by little, as I started to talk, I started to slow myself down a little bit. And because we were in rapport, he slowed down a little bit.
Right.
I then started to soften my voice. He started to soften his voice. And I said, look, let's do some work on this. Let me do a bit of trance work on this. And he said, okay, fair enough. Because I knew that if I couldn't help him, I had to tell the police.
Yeah.
Because it was going to hurt somebody. And, you know, everything we do in therapy is confidential unless the person is going to hurt themselves or somebody else, in which case we have to alert the authorities. But I thought, I'm not going to do that. Let me see what happens. I guided him into trance, and we did some work on his childhood, on his inner child. And he sobbed and released so much pain. He was a poor fella, but, you know, he was reliving some of the brutality from his childhood. And at the end of the session, he came out of trance. We'd released so much of that inner pain. We did some inner child healing. You know, he imagined his little boy, his 7-year-old self, is hugging his inner child. He's telling his inner child that he loves him, that the child is worthy of love, that the child is not to blame, that the child is a beautiful little boy, etc., etc. And that causes, as I say it now, it causes me to feel a bit choked up. Because there's so much beauty when we reconnect with our inner child. He came out of trance and he was a different man. He was a different man. He was calmer. Wow. He was softer. And he said, I'm so grateful for what we've done here today, Burgess. I'm not going to go to my wife's work. I realized the man was drunk. I realized he's an arsehole. I've got to stop this now. And he left my office and went back home and made patchings up with his wife. But I breathed a big sigh of relief at the end of that session because I knew that was very, very serious.
That was life-changing because obviously this man wanted help. Like he didn't know probably why he was this way. Why am I always so jealous? Like he already lost one wife, this wife, right? Like probably a very lovely woman. And the relationship is just hanging by a thread because he can't stop doing what he's been doing. And look what happened. That is so powerful, Steve. That I'm really glad you shared this because it doesn't have to be that way with a relationship. There's many issues that anybody brings to a relationship. And what I'm getting from you is, you know what? If you don't have the answers, you know, if you can find a qualified hypnotherapist like yourself, like, why not give it a shot? What do you got to lose?
Yeah,
right?
Hypnotherapist, regression therapist, psychotherapist, somebody who can work, inner child therapist, somebody who is happy to work on the emotional roots of the issue, and not just sort of talk about it for years, or, you know, don't go to your analyst for years because you often don't get anywhere with that sort of stuff, but go where you're going to do some work, some interventionist therapy, intervene in the issue, and find a therapist that you trust and that knows what they're doing. And there are many around. And if you're working with a therapist and after 2 or 3 sessions, it's obviously not right, let them go. Find a different one because there's a therapist for everybody out there.
That's right. Now, we're just about out of time. We got a minute left. Kathy had asked, I'm sorry, start it. I think I let it go. She was asking it in Florida because she's in Florida too. She was asking where you practice. Do you do practice anymore, Steve, still, or you do it mainly online?
I do everything online. I run past life regression group workshops in West Palm Beach. So my website is steveburgesshypnosis.com. People can find me, steveburgesshypnosis.com. My books are on there. My YouTube channel, Hypno for All, is on there with free hypnotherapy recordings and videos and interviews with my team on regression therapy. I know you said that last time. So people can find me. It's all on steveburgesshypnosis.com. My books, 2 of them are audio books as well on Amazon and Audible. That's The Power of Past Life Regression and Famous Past Lives. I'm just about to start recording the new book in the next week or so. So that will be out at some point. So people can hear my dulcet tones talking with my Yorkshire accent.
They're commenting. They're commenting. So I want to thank you all for being here. Next week, we have, I believe, Tom Doggo coming on. You guys love Tom. He's got anything to do with, my mind just went blank, not Skinwalker Ranch, very close to it. He's about Dogman, Bigfoot, you name it. He's booked for next week. Carrie Lynn and I will be here on Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Beneath the Hollow Moon. I got to touch base with her. We usually work out chunks of shows to come. So we got lots of great ideas. So that's coming. Stay tuned because we have Dolly Saffron and Preston Dennett coming up next with the Light Gate. I want to send you all so much love and light. If you guys ever want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me on any social media platform, including facebook.com/AngelRock. Quickest and easiest way is usually hit me up on Messenger. I do psychic and mediumship readings. I do the Akashic Records. I do energy healing. I do teaching and mentoring. And Steve, thank you again. I'm going to try and get him to come back, you guys, because they are all going, oh my gosh, this is a fantastic show. All right, you guys, stay tuned. Thank you, Steve. Hang tight for just one sec. And stay tuned for Dolly and Preston next, guys. All right, we'll see you on Thursday. And